All right. Good afternoon, Dan. Man, usually it's morning when we're hopping on with coffee, but today it's an afternoon podcast, so we can fit it in.
Yeah, you got to do what you can right before bow season. It's crunch time and our schedules are busy, so always make time for these conversations though. They're always good.
Yeah. Oh man, today was great. It was like we didn't even have a plan. Like sometimes we have like we set aside like this is what we're going to talk about today, or this would be good subject matter. But today we just hit record and let the conversation go, and kind of talked about prep for season, and then really got into hunting instincts, which I enjoyed.
Yeah, the instincts, the let's just call it the mental game of bow hunting. 80% mental, 20% physical, or however you want to break it down. The mental aspect is like I'm super passionate about it because I know like I've struggled so much as a young kid bow hunting and know that building that sharpness mentally and that rabbit trails many different as you guys will hear on this podcast, but just an excellent conversation.
Oh, dude, the best. Yeah, I love some of your stalking tips in there, and yeah, it just always sparks stuff into my own bow hunting. And then the hunting angry piece was probably my favorite. Is yeah, you tapped into kind of that inner drive on the hunt. So yeah, man, great conversation.
Yep, for sure.
Cool. Well, yeah, we want to thank Juniper Mountain Coffee. I am really enjoying their roast. This is an absolute premium coffee. I can't get enough of it. And these guys actually source their own coffee. It's down in Panama, right, Dan?
Yep, Panama.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, they go down there and like what Brian was saying, they're sourcing the coffee from the growers and they cut out the middlemen and they build these relationships with these families that grow the coffee and import it and they roast in Florida actually. And these are Oregon boys that basically have been doing this for 20 years and they're just really bringing this coffee to the market. And when it comes to coffee and premium coffee, what this coffee is rated is is second to none for what you're actually having to give for it. 16 bucks for a bag for, the this coffee that's scores in the upper 80s on the coffee scale and we're going to have more on that when we go down and visit Juniper Mountain at their roasting facility, but it's just that premium fantastic coffee that man, it's just the best, plain and simple.
Yeah, family owned too, and man, they're hunters, Eastern Oregon, and that's the reason that they're supporting Eastman's. And I always love these companies that back causes that they really feel passionate about, and so that's why we're so excited to partner with them. So Juniper Mountain Coffee, they're our first sponsor on Eastman's Bow Hunting Journal, and I know both Dan and I really appreciate it, and man, just loving this coffee. So thanks to those guys for their support.
Yep, awesome stuff. Get yourself some. Support hunters, support small business. That's ultimately, in my opinion, what makes America great is that small business. So yeah, jump on it. Hey, and then we have a ton going on here. Of course, the mule deer course, me and Brian put together. It's go time, guys. Like if that last minute information that you're seeking that you're going to need before your mule deer hunt, now's the time. And we still have a preseason special going on. Get $10 off. You get an outdoor edge knife. You get the Black Ovis meat sacks, which are awesome, by the way. You'll see me using them in our Beyond the Grids, which leads us up to latest release coming out. I'm stoked about this release. Brian's High Country Mule Deer Hunt. What a hunt, Brian! I can't wait to get this thing on the YouTube channel.
Oh man, I'm excited. Yeah, I really like the edit and how it came together. Yeah, it's just the ultimate adventure there in the high country, and to be able to capture it and then arrow a nice mature buck. Yeah, it was just unbelievable. So yeah, I'm really excited about the release, and also make sure to check out two of Dan's largest bulls, which are great episodes. Dan, you did so good on those episodes, capturing those hunts, and then what bulls, man? It's just incredible.
Yeah, just hunts of my life. I'm just so excited to share with everybody and the great feedback and to be able to relive those by watching the videos is special and for me to be able to share it with everyone is special because these are the type of hunts that just mean the world to me and that really like I feel like they make up like hunts like these or make up like the foundation of bow hunting and why I love it so much and why I love hunting elk so much. So just a special season coming up. We have a ton more episodes coming up. We're going to have 11 episodes this year, and awesome hunting, producing these shows, and more from Brian too. Elk hunting coming up as well. So exciting stuff. I mean, I feel like we're putting out some awesome content here, and yeah, I think I love teaching and disclosing on some of our tactics too. And I think the takeaway from some of our bow hunting, myself and Brian, is very very good stuff. And you can apply these tactics that we do out there in the field for yourself as well.
Yeah, that's what I really like about these shows that are coming out, Dan, is it's similar to the podcast where it's just like great information on how to target bucks and bulls and kind of walks you through the hunt and what we're thinking at the time and our strategy and how it comes together. And then you just put out an episode about elk hunting or some of the biggest bulls that we've taken over the years over there at Eastman. So that's a great episode as well.
Yeah, yeah, just kind of highlighting these big bulls from over the years that we've got in on and successfully harvested, and some of them, a couple encounters we didn't harvest them. You don't always come out with a punch tag on an encounter, but there's definitely a method to the madness, and I wanted to reveal some of these secrets. And this public land hunting, and it's difficult, but it is possible. It's possible out there to punch your tag on a 350 pluser. And so it's just a matter of getting out there and doing it and consuming as much content as possible, specifically ours.
Yeah, we are
We
we are
appreciate.
pretty passionate about ours for sure. Yeah, so check out everything we're doing: the magazines, the podcast, the Beyond the Grid, and Beyond the Grid. Just search Eastman's Hunting TV on YouTube, and that'll pop up, and you can check out those videos. And yeah, more to come. 11 episodes this season, so make sure you get in that content. And with that, man, we're right on the edge of season. This is the perfect conversation for it. So yeah, man, we should get into it.
Heck yeah, let's do her.
Well, yeah, I think coming into these hunts, it's so difficult. Like we make all these plans for these hunts and e-scouting and hunt plans and we plan out our days. It just seems like when you go on these hunts, they're always different than you expect, you know? It's like you always get there. I always like to think it's like a fighter. You get in a fight and it's not really a fight until you get punched in the face. And it's kind of like that on these hunts too. It's like you go down, very rarely does plan A work out. So like how do you approach these, Dan, or how do you approach these challenges that you run into? And I know not all of them can be conquered or you can't cross every hurdle, but boy, it sure pays to like keep a positive mindset and keep theorizing and keep planning and then go on to plan B, plan C. Do you find that with your hunts as well, Dan? Is that it's like never quite as planned?
Yeah, it seems like it's very very rare that things go as scripted, but having those five plans, or five different A, B, C, D, and E and F, and hoping that one of those works, and that there's not too many surprises in between. But that's ultimately, I think, what makes a successful somebody that's able to be successful on public land consistently, is able to wrap their mind around having multiple plans like that, and then being mobile as well. Like if you have to completely reset and bail from one part of the unit and start from scratch on another part of the unit, and do it in a timely manner where you don't have to spend a day picking up your camp or whatever. And that's one of the reasons why. And I think we hunt kind of the same way you and I do, with kind of traveling light, and it depends on the hunt as well. But traveling light and being able to pick up and move 15 miles in just a couple hours, and starting from scratch that evening or that next morning or whatever, and just really full court press at all times. And I think it's become easier over the years because we just know the program now, and so it comes easy if you've done it a ton. And I mean, that's been our bread and butter. I mean, it's been my bread and butter at least the last 10 years at Eastman's, having all these hunts stacked up back to back to back to back, and the level of pressure and just the efficiency that you have to evolve, how you process and approach each hunt, so you do have that longevity. You can and find success on the majority of your hunts. And so yeah, it's difficult for it to all put together, but just like anything, the more you do it, the better you get. We've talked about that a lot.
Yeah, life of a gypsy, right? It's like you got to
Yeah,
be able to
yeah.
pick up all your stuff and be able to move throughout the unit at the drop of a hat. And I may move every single night. Sometimes I end up in a different spot, and I don't have the most comfortable or luxurious camp. Like it's pretty rough in it. Like if it gets super cold and I got to set up a wall tent, so be it. But for the most part, I don't even hardly set up one anymore. It's just like, man, I just sleep in the dirt on a little canvas, or I love sleeping in the back of my truck, which is tough when you have a cameraman. You can't really kick him out and you're sleeping in the back of the truck. But yeah, I just sleep in the dirt, like bivvy out. If it's going to rain that night, I just set up a small tent and I have everything I need. I've got a little cook stove I set up on the tailgate, cooler full of food or whatever the case is. But yeah, just being able to adapt and be able to be mobile is such a huge part of it. And you've done really good at your planning too. It seems like you always have a really good game plan for like your elk. I think you've killed your last couple elk on the first day in there, the first couple days in there anyway. So that's you did see what you expected when you got in there.
Yeah, for sure. It makes you laugh because, some of those hunts I've been done in 2 hours. I think the last 4 years that I've killed bulls in Wyoming, 3 of those years have been the first few hours of the hunt. And yeah, it's nice when it goes smooth like that. But in the stuff that you don't see is, the week before when I was in Colorado and there's no elk, within striking distance of 11,000 feet. And so, you do all that you can to gather intel before the hunt, but there's still these factors that are just out of your control. And I know, like this year, there's going to be curveballs. I just can feel it. From what I'm hearing from people, I'm getting intel, what elk are doing, what the antelope are doing. I've heard that there's no green grass above 11,000 feet in Colorado. I don't know if that's just where this guy's been looking. Um, a buddy of mine was way back in the wilderness on horseback and didn't see one elk. The flies were insane, and he got way back in there to the head end, like 18 miles from the trailhead at the very head end, some of the most isolated country in Wyoming or in the lower 48. And there's the Mecca. There's 2,500 head of elk in one group: cows, calves, bulls, spikes, giant bulls, small bulls, everything in between, all grouped up at this one elevation where they're out of the bugs, it turned out to be. And so I just feel like that this year is there's going to be curveballs, and you're just like, I'm thinking about my Wyoming hunt and I'm going to go do the same thing that I did last year and go into the same zone. But I don't expect that it's going to be as easy as it was last year, where I just went in there first morning, found one bull, called him in. And all these hunts that I'm planning and that I'm doing, you gotta stack the odds in your favor if you expect to be successful hunt after hunt. And I tell you, like this Wyoming elk hunt way back in there, you might see one bull or two or maybe three if you're lucky. And that's really not that much to play off of. And yeah, one encounter, one arrow, one bull, that's all it takes. But it can go sideways very quickly. And whereas I'll be a little more relaxed if I'm going into a zone where I know I'm going to be into 10 plus bulls a day because I've been in there, or I have intel or whatever. I just know it. You hunt a little easier. You're not maybe so wound as tight, but still, it's just you got to just roll with the flow, and you just never know what a hunt. Like I said in the video, like you leave the trailhead with a lump in your throat, not knowing what you're going to encounter. It could be the last time you ever leave the trailhead. You might not make it out alive. You might have to get out of there with a helicopter. And that's part of the reason why I do it, is because I just I have an addiction for that adventure and for, getting myself outside of my comfort zone. I could ramble on about this all the time, all day. But I think you kind of feel what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it's a true adventure, man. We get to go embark on it. It is the reason we do it, and success is never guaranteed. There's like, you find a way to grind it out, find a way to get it done, but I never feel like I get super lucky. I just feel like I
No.
earn an opportunity. And really it's keeping myself up, and it's not always my first play or my first bet. And we talked about being mobile, in a truck camp. It's also being mobile when you're a backpacker. It's like we'll have that video showing up of a high country hunt of mine for mule deer. But there's like a lot of years where I backpack into a spot and don't find them, or I have 2-3 days worth of stuff, and I've got to get down to the truck and totally regroup and then drive to another trailhead to another spot and hike into a totally different spot to go see if I can find a mule deer. But it just seems like that adventure that you're talking about, that uncertainty. And dude, it's like I feel it too. I feel it when I leave my family, when I'm driving away from my house, that it is uncertainty and you don't know what's going to happen, and it is the Wild West. Like, you are going on an adventure. And so like you just get down there and get started, but it's very rarely that my first bet pays off, or where I think I'm going to find bucks, I find them, because the conditions are different every year. And even if it's a money spot of mine, like last year I went into a spot where I've killed a couple bucks in. It's been really good to me, but it seems like it had got popular, or guys had found out about it. There was a little bit more hunting pressure, and I didn't see the number of bucks. And you know until I could find it. And then so much of it is capitalizing on these opportunities. And that's whether that opportunity comes on day 7, or like you, the first few hours of your couple Wyoming hunts, like really capitalizing on those opportunities. Because I know in my younger years, man, I'd get into some insane elk action or some insane hunting action. And it's like you almost take it for granted that it's going to be like that for the whole season, but things change pretty quick. And if you don't capitalize on a bull or a buck when you have the chance, all of a sudden they're not there anymore. And so you really have to be in striking distance when I picture you, Dan, like similar to me. I'm fairly aggressive. When I see the animal I want, I am looking to make a play. I'm not looking to be passive or watch that thing for 2, 3, 4 days. I don't care how big he is. It's like eventually you have to go all in and make a chance at that buck or that bull. And so for me, like I've sat on a giant 200 and some inch buck for 5 days waiting for the perfect play. And then I finally think I got it and I move in and a 2 point busts me. And it's like, well, I could have done that on day 1 or day 2 and then continued to hunt, or maybe got another play at that buck. So for me, like I want to be aggressive. I don't want to be reckless and blow them out of the country. I want to make a good play at them. But to me, there's no real perfect play. It's kind of like just get over there and try it, or get over there and try to make something happen. And sometimes there is this scenario where the buck isn't bedded in the right spot, or there are bucks that are going to see me. And sure, I'll wait till the next hunt or wait till the next day. Sure, I'll give it that. But for the most part, I'm making a play and seeing if I can kill that thing. Are you doing the same thing on your hunts? Like really trying to be aggressive and make a play and kill them, give yourself a chance?
Yeah, on public land, you have to be aggressive. And I think what you illustrated with mule deer, you can get away with, and being a little bit more passive and waiting for that right approach. You have to in a lot of cases. But man, like third week of September, big bulls, that bull might be 10 miles the other direction overnight. And so you're factoring that into like the time of year and what the animal's behavior is and what stage of the rut they're in, maybe. And so factoring that all in, and then if are you hunting in grizzly country or wolf country, predators can blow out animals, other hunters can blow out other animals. If it's a high hunter density area, you bet if I see an animal that's a shooter, I'm making a play. It's happening because there's no tomorrow as far as I'm concerned on
Mhm.
public land. And that doesn't mean I'm gonna go approach something from upwind. I'm not gonna be an idiot. Don't be
Mhm.
an idiot and force something. Still be very calculated. But yeah, I never, 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 never bank on, oh, he'll be here tomorrow, or oh, he'll be here in 2 days rutting these cows. He's locked in with these cows. Nah, that's not how it works. Sometimes, there might be an exception. I've actually seen it and I've killed the bull that I've been hearing 3 days later, but um that's that's definitely an exception. It's not the rule.
Man, it's so right. I've I've been passive on big bulls, or let's just say I've had this scenario. The only time that I'm patient on bulls, I would say, is like the morning when I don't catch up to them and they disappear in the deep cover. I don't go chase them because I think it's like money in the bank to know where that bull is for an evening hunt, because I love the downhill thermals. I love them coming out to the meadows. That's where I'll really be patient. And so I'll track a bull in the morning. And if I don't get a chance, I want to keep tabs on them. I'll stay in the field on them. And then, I'm really waiting for that evening play on them. But for the most part, like I've seen a bull in the evening and like, can I get to him? Can I not? Oh no, I don't think I can quite make it there. I don't think I quite have enough time. And then the morning comes and that 350 bull is gone. Like I can't even find him the next day. Nobody spooked him. He just moved on, like you're talking about. So man, I'm the same. I see a shooter bull, I see a shooter buck. Yeah, I'm looking to make a play. I'm aggressive. I want to see that opportunity and try to make it happen as much as I can. And it is like a mix of like just a sprinkle of patience in there with my aggressiveness seems to help. And but yeah, I'm gonna try to kill him at all cost.
Yeah, there's a new slate every morning. You're starting fresh, and I don't, from my experience anyway, whether you're hunting public or private, like where I was hunting last year in Montana, it's private property, and these elk are just doing their thing. But still, I found it very interesting, their movements and how just nomadic they move, even with very little human intervention and little pressure, and really no super predators. No grizzly bears or wolves. And one day there might be 100 elk with 24 bulls in this herd, and then the next day they're doing something completely different. They're 4 miles away because they're just being elk, and new elk come in. You just don't know what's going to happen. And you bring up a good point where, I won't be as aggressive in the morning if I'm feeling it out. I'm like, okay, these elk bedded here. I can get to this point and wait for them to get up, or maybe they're not talking much, and I can slip in on them. I'm going to take my time a little bit more. But if it comes down to it, and I'm kind of in the zone, and it's evening time, and it's the rut, and there's a lot of activity going on, that bull could be gone, the next morning. I'll be very aggressive. But yeah, it's just another one of those things that you just feel out over time. And once again, it's not necessarily just public land like elk and deer, and they have their movements, and they stay random. I mean, if they did the same thing every day, day after day after day after day, that's when they get into a pattern. They get killed by a predator or a hunter. And so I think the smart bulls too, even during the rut, they'll push cows kind of to where they want them, and mix it up. And elk are funny too, because during the rut they they like to spread out, and they'll push cows away from each other because they don't like the competition, and then they show up in places that you don't normally see them. That's probably a whole podcast in itself on elk behavior. But yeah, it's just, public land, you better be aggressive, but be very calculated.
Yeah, it's like it's such a mix of it, man. It's like so tough to try to articulate. It's like you want to give yourself a chance, but then, I hate busting elk. I hate busting mule deer. I hate letting them know I'm hunting them. So there's a point at which you know what you can get away with and what you can't, and sitting back. And I had a big buck in Colorado a couple years ago that I was hunting. And man, I hunted that buck for 3 days, and I laid within 200 yards of that buck a couple different days. There was just no approach. I couldn't get any closer. There was nothing I could do to be more aggressive. So all I could do was sit with a good wind and hope he worked into me. And then I'd back out and make my way to camp. And the next day I was able to play the game on him. And I actually missed that buck. I went all the way over top this 13,000-foot peak, and I slipped down into range of this buck. And man, it's also like I'm real patient and more comfortable in bow range. So there was like 3 bucks in the group. They did exactly what I thought. I snuck into bow range of his bed, or where I thought he'd come out to feed, and they came out perfect. And of course, the other 2 bucks, maybe it was 3 bucks or 2 bucks and a doe, and then the big buck, maybe there was 4 deer total. But The other 3 deer came out and fed, and the big buck just stayed bedded, and they fed right in front of me. And like one bedded down at 35 yards looking in my direction. And then the big buck actually came out, and I couldn't draw my bow forever. I had him in bow range for 10, 15 minutes and couldn't draw my bow because I had that one bedded looking in my direction, the other one up feeding, and they were all so close that I knew if I was just patient, I'd get a good shot. And he kind of circled around the hill, and man, I mean, it wasn't that tough of a shot. It was like 45 yards or 47 yards or something like that. I was just sitting on a rock, and I had expected to shoot him at a good angle. But by the time I got drawn and twisted around on him, I was kind of twisted, where I was shooting, and I skinned one right over the top of his back. It like skinned his back right there. It was just a heartbreaker. So I didn't kill that buck, but I sure should have. Like it was about as done as deal as I could get, and I duffed the shot on that deal, which hurts bad. But it is like you got to be aggressive and give yourself a chance, but then you have to be patient enough to not blow them up or blow them out of the country, because the longer you get to play the game, like the more apt that animal is to make a mistake or put themselves in a good position for us hunters. So yeah, it's like, and it's listening to your instincts, just like you said, Dan. It's like honing and listening to your instincts and what you can get away with and what you can't, and not pushing that envelope too far, but giving yourself a chance and getting close, I think.
Yeah, yeah. It's a feel thing, and you just got to practice and do it. And I feel like if you're a high strung person, you're gonna struggle a little bit. And I wouldn't consider myself high strung, but I'm high energy, let's say that. But as
Yeah,
you get
I'm on the
older,
edge.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm walking the line. But I don't know, with experience and a little bit of age, you learn how to rein it in at times and when you need to let it go. And you might be sprinting towards a buck or a bull trying to cut them off, and and you kind of just feel it out. But yeah, don't rush anything, I would say. And there's a difference. I want to delineate that too. There's a difference between rushing something and making a calculated decision where you're running at an animal to cut them
Hmm.
off.
Hmm.
There's a big difference there, and knowing when to strike and knowing when to hold back. And so, yeah, just I think it goes back to your primal instinct. And we were doing this when we were kids, and I feel like any red-blooded American male has the primal instinct. It doesn't whoever. I don't care where you're from. The human race, let's call it that. The human race, a red-blooded American male has that primal instinct to hunt and to gather and to provide for their family. I mean, that's what makes America great, and that's what makes the human race, sustainable. Like how have we made it this many years? Hunting and gathering. I mean, that's why the human race has gone on. Obviously, we've evolved into farming and the diverse ways of productivity, but still our roots are hunting and gathering. And so embrace that, and start young, start your kids young, and start with squirrels, and that builds it. It does, it really does.
Oh, you're so right, dude. It's like 200,000 years as human beings, and we only survive with our ability to hunt. And I don't think me and you 100,000 years ago would have been farming. Like we definitely would have had bows in our hands and been hunting. But yeah, it is a primal, visceral feeling, and those instincts are in us, just like you're saying. Like it's in all of us, and you kind of hone it and get better at it. But yeah, there is nothing funner than action, man. It's like for me, that's the most fun of bow hunting. Like I love all parts about it, like the adventure. I love the mountains. I love the time I get to think. Like there's all these good points to hunting that I absolutely love. But the real fun and joy for me, the thrilling excitement, the getting into critters, the making a play, the listening to your instincts and making moves, and sometimes running because you're out of sight and you're cutting them off, and then slowing down to a snail's pace and coming up and seeing that buck's horns or that bull's horns right there, and like trying to draw at the right time. And I think that's another thing too, is like Man, early in my hunting career, I'll say, I won't lump you in there, but I think you're right with me, is like, man, it's trying to force arrows or force shots like through brush, or force arrows into bad angles or tough angles, where it's just like it's a there's so much room for error there, when if you just wait for the right quartering away, the right broadside animal, you wait till he steps clear of those branches. I think the longer we do this, the more comfortable we get inside bow range. And we've said it before, like, getting into bow range is only half the battle. That's only like the start of the game. Then actually getting drawn and putting a perfect arrow into that animal, that's a whole nother beast. And so you have to be patient when you're in that time. And just like that story I told in Colorado, like, I love to wait till that buck's not looking at me, or when I'm shooting a bull elk, to have those cows down grazing or be hidden from their view when I draw my bow. It seems like, and there's a place and a time to draw your bow when animals are looking at you. Sometimes you're caught, you're busted, they're looking right at you, and they're not going to look away. It's anytime they're going to spook. And your only choice there is to try to move really, really slow. I don't like to draw my bow and try to stand up, or draw my bow and walk around a tree. I like to be in position and then try to get up my bow just as slow as I can, and just ease back my limbs as slow as I can, and then try to settle my pin and make a shot. So there is a time and a place to draw and move when an animal is looking at you. But if you can keep that element of surprise, and they don't know they're hunting you, or they don't know that you're hunting them, and then you can draw when they're looking away from you, or when they're down and have their heads feeding, boy, that's money in the bank. And I think you also shoot and execute better when you don't have that stress of, he's going to go now, I've got to hurry up and make a shot, which, I've gotten better at handling that stress as well. Is I'm either going to make a good shot or I'm not going to make one. But still, it's way better to shoot at this animal that doesn't know you're there. Do you agree?
100%. When you're talking about this stuff, I'm thinking about these videos of a bobcat or mountain lions and how they're hunting deer. And there's like some insane videos on YouTube. And I think I saw one on Instagram of this bobcat basically snuck up to the heels of this mule deer doe and jumped on its face and like grabbed it by the forehead and annihilated this mule deer. And you look at these predators and you look at how they're moving, and obviously they're crouched, they're moving at a slug's pace, and they're setting their feet down very carefully, very quietly, very gingerly. You want to feel the earth, and that's exactly what they're doing with their feet. And then that's the power of having your prey within eyesight. Instead of doing this, hidden draw, expose yourself, you stay in view, you have your eyes locked on your prey. You have so much more power if your eyes are locked in on your prey. You're looking at the motions, you're looking at the positioning of its ears. If its ears are pointed my direction, I freeze. Even if their head's down and they're chewing or whatever, their ears are insane. If their ears are pointed my direction, I don't move a muscle. If I see that first movement that they're lifting my head up, or going to spin around to look my direction, I freeze. And being in sight, and I'm not saying just standing up, walking at something, but having that visual on your prey gives you so much more power to move when you need to move and do it stealthy, rather than doing these, surprises that you're talking about, drawing your bow or peeking up from the edge of a rock and having all this movement. Because once again, it's the movement that these animals pick up on. And so, like, and I'm sure you've done this too, Brian, is with axis deer or mule deer. If they're looking at me, like, you might have an animal like laying there and they're facing you, and elk too, I've done it. You can actually crawl up on them while they're looking your direction. And as long as you stay low, and it's not like you have to be like belly crawling, it helps. But if you stay low and you're moving at a snail's pace, and you're just one step at a time, moving your arm, your hand, and putting your hand out, and then bringing up your back leg. I've crawled right into bow range on animals with them looking at me. But it's the movement that they pick up on, and then I'm looking at their body language too. And these axis deer, mule deer do it too. They'll be laying there, and you can tell when they start dozing off. They kind of pin their ears back, and they might drop their snout a little bit, and their eyes might be open, but you can tell they're not paying attention. And so these are the tiniest mannerisms that you're picking up on as a predator that allows you to get into bow range, that has really allowed me to take my stalking abilities to the next level. And just with practice over the course of several years implementing it, like, it's amazing what you can accomplish as a predator if you do that.
Oh man, such good points, Dan. Yeah, I love that, man. That's the nuances of stalking for sure. You're right. If you can just move slow, it's such an advantage to be able to keep your eyes on them. You know, it's the if you have your eyes on them, you can read what they're thinking or what they're doing. And you're right. I shot a mouflon sheep that's super switched on, where I just slid down the hill and then shot him across the canyon. But I slipped down an open hillside in complete view of those mouflon sheep, and I was just moving ultra slow until I could get into range. And I also like your points about bobcats and mountain lions, dude. It's house cats. You want to talk about the ultimate predator? They kill billions of birds and rabbits and mice and things every single year. And if you watch a cat, like, I think we can learn a lot from watching cats out hunting. But yeah, you're right. They get really low and then they move so slow. And then to watch their patience, like, I have seen a cat with a Tweety bird right in front of it, just walking in the grass, and he's right there in striking distance, and that cat will just stay frozen. He's like waiting for his time to go all in. He's waiting for his time to try to pounce on that bird, but they'll sit motionless like that. They have so much patience in striking zone. You know, we can learn so much from that. Like, the more comfortable we get inside that red zone, inside striking distance, where we just don't get too excited, we don't move too quick, and then just believing too. It's like I've had those deer look right at me, like turn their heads and look right in my direction, and it's you almost think they see you and they're like looking right through you, and then they go back to what they're doing. So, like, trusting in your movement and trusting in your stalking, like, sometimes those deer and those elk will turn their heads and look right at you. And if you just freeze and hold still, they'll go back to being deer and go back to being elk. And it's like you said, Dan, we just like after hunting all these years, you kind of pick up on being able to read what that animal is thinking, what that prey is thinking. And so I know when that animal looks at me, like, I know whether I'm caught or not, even if he's looking right at me. Like, a lot of times I just stay frozen and they almost like look right through you and then go back to being deer. And then he puts his head down and I'm able to draw back and arrow that buck, you know. But being controlled in bow range, man, that is an art. That is something that you really want to strive to be good at, because when you're calm, cool, and collected in bow range, animals die.
Yep, absolutely. And you have to, even if you don't have it, you have to act like you have confidence in being the ultimate predator. Maybe you don't have the experience, but if you think that you're the ultimate predator and you've done your homework, you can make it happen if your mindset is right. I'm confident in that. But your mindset has to be right, and you have to, you still have to respect all their senses, but it's just amazing what you can get away with and how close you can get in on something if you just stay low and go slow, and all your movements are slow. And it can be hard. And I practice this too, because you might spend all this time stocking in on something moving super slow, and then you go to draw your bow back and you have all this movement, and you have one speed that you've practiced, and that's to have normal motion drawing your bow back, and then you did all that work for nothing because they picked up on that movement. And so I'll practice like ultra, and I've done it. This Wyoming bull that I killed last year, the bull was looking at me, and for a minute 40 on the video, the whole video plays out, and I'm like in line, like linear with my bow, and I was on at full draw on my bull for 45 seconds, and then I had to let down because I didn't know if he was going to step up or not. But I let down straight to him, the slowest motion you could ever like possibly imagine yourself letting down your bow without making a noise. That's what I had to do, and that bull didn't see it. He didn't see it. Look how he's looking. Go watch the video and look how this bull is like looking around. He's looking in my direction, but I didn't move. I didn't move left or right, and I had my bow out in front of me. I didn't drop my bow arm, but I let my arrow down just ultimately slow. I just raised my arm up like this and I just used my back and then just let it down. And then I took some deep breaths and kind of regrouped. I'd been holding for like 45 seconds at that point. And then he turned to go and walk around that tree and I made it happen. But that's a testament right there. If you can just rein it in and move ultra, ultra slow, you'll be shocked what you can get away with. I'm telling you. Now, the one animal that it's so difficult, which I'm about ready to start hunting here in about 10 days, are antelope with their eyes like placed on the side of their heads. And I don't know what it is. They're like a mouflon where they can just see amazingly. And I don't care if that buck is facing directly away from me, he can still see me. So just when you think that like you can crawl into him into bow range for sure, but the the hardest part, you get into bow range, maybe you're 60 yards on him, he's facing directly away. First, you have to expose yourself to get a quality range on him. You got to be confident you get a great range. And then you have to drop down again or do whatever you're doing to hook your release and then get your bow up. So antelope are incredibly difficult and you still have to move like ultra ultra slow. But I would say that's probably the hardest thing to make it happen, not only because it seems like when you're stalking antelope, I mean if you're in sagebrush you're probably golden, but if you're like in these grassy fields and rolly hills that I've stalked in, it's like they can pick you out, like pick that stuff apart pretty well. But man, those are probably the only animals that I really, really have to be careful with how I move on. But once again, taking a buddy antelope hunting last year, and he's pretty new at it. I mean, he hadn't shot a couple antelope with his bow or anything, but we'd make all this work and we make the stock, and then you're moving all jittery and jolty, when it's time to make a shot and they see you, and when they see you, the odds that you're going to get a good arrow off in them probably just went from 95% to 5% once they have you picked off. So it's just practice. Have fun with it. Practice. I used to, heck, when I was a guide at Dome Mountain in Montana, this has been over 10 years ago. I would stalk elk all the time. In the springtime, I'd be shed hunting. I would see how close I could get up to cow elk or bulls or whatever, and play the wind and play those movements and crawl in on them and actually see what I could get away with. And I learned a lot during that time that I had, just to the time that I was able to spend out there around these animals that I bow hunted during bow season is so insanely powerful. And if you don't live in the West and you're not around elk, then it can be a little more difficult, of course. But I'm tell you what, go watch some mountain lions or some bobcats stalk some prey, and I guarantee you can take some tidbits away for sure.
Yeah, that's such great points, Dan. It's the subtle differences. And if you don't live out west, white-tailed does are great to stalk. Mule deer,
Yep.
like I guess mule deer does are out west too. I guess you're not going to find those in Pennsylvania, but yeah, it's like go stalk deer. That's what makes you better is stalking. And man, you're just so spot on. It's the subtle differences that ends up in arrows critter or like critters being arrowed, just like your bull last year. That move that you made to let down your bow, he didn't see you walked up and you put an arrow in. It's like you move any different in that scenario, you don't kill your biggest bull to date. He gets away and
Yep.
he's a story. And that's the difference I notice with new hunters from experienced hunters is experienced hunters, you just learn what you can get away with and what you can, and it's just these little tiny subtle differences where me and somebody that's new may take the same approach, and it just seems like I can get away with murder because I know what I can do and what I can't. And on like those antelope that you're talking about too, uh you know the hardest part of a lot of killing these animals, and this goes for antelope, mule deer, elk, is getting a good range. Elk are nice because you can hit their horns, but there's this deal where you don't want to expose yourself too far over the grass line. And you learn as a bow hunter that there's an arc to the arrow, that you actually don't have to see the whole body of that elk or that mule deer or that antelope to shoot them. For me, I just need to see that top half or where I need to set my pin, but I don't want to expose myself too high over this hill or too high over this undulation. I want to be just enough, just barely get over the grass with my rangefinder and with my eye. And range finding's an art too. Don't kid yourself. It's an art like bow hunting, like stalking, like anything. Being able to get a good range to hit them 2, 3, 4 times and go, okay, I got a good range. Because if you have a good range, then you can put a precise arrow in them. But the moment you come up too high or you expose yourself too much, all of a sudden you're busted holding your rangefinder. Now you still have to get up your bow and get your bow drawn and try to shoot him. And most of the time the scenario blows up. But if you can get a range and he doesn't know you're there, if you can stay hidden under that grass that's right in front of you and just barely come up to get a range and then just barely come up to be able to get your pin where it goes and arc that arrow in, you kill a lot more critters. And yeah, and I even noticed like movement. I love to use the terrain features, but I also like to use like trees in front of me and put trees in between me and the animal's head. If you can't see the animal's head, he can't see you as well. And then you can creep in, but just be careful here because that movement, sometimes they can catch you between the branches. There may be a green tree and you think that you have cover and you start moving in, and all of a sudden that mule deer spotted me in between the branches moving in. So you still want to move slow and really put like the heart of that tree or the biggest trunk in between you and his head, and then you can continue to move in and really use everything that the landscape's given you. But you're so right, man. It's these little tiny nuances that equal consistently dead critters from consistently failed stocks, man. It's just these little tiny things that make the difference.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And then to put it all of those together is what results in a successful bow hunt. I mean, ultimately, from your camp to your gear to, how much you've prepped to the stock, all these little tiny nuances that have to go right, that have to go in your favor. You have to know, that the animal's behavior, the prey that you're hunting. It's still just amazing of how much has to go right for a successful hunt to ultimately come to fruition. And yeah, you can get lucky, there's lucky hunts and you punch your tag, but to do it year after year and hunt after hunt after hunt, just the determination and the resilience that you have to have on all those tiny details is pretty shocking, really, if you think about it, like what actually has to come together.
Yeah. Well, and you make a good point. The resilience, the dedication. Like you are gonna fail. Things are gonna go wrong. You're gonna spook animals. I mean, you're gonna miss animals. Like I talked about that Colorado buck that I shot one over his back. He was a great buck that I would have loved to have. And I've got a really good archery skill set, and sometimes that stuff just happens. Downhill shot, twisted up, and it's let my pin float, executed good, and the arrow didn't hit his mark. It's like it's gonna happen. So then it becomes about your mindset. It's like it's really easy when you get in one of those lows to just pack it up and go home and go, well, that was my chance. But you just have to keep after it. It's even those mule deer, elk, whatever it is, sometimes it feels like mission impossible. Like even my elk last year, it's like, I had plays on elk and I didn't bust a whole lot. I didn't miss any or anything like that. But I just have plays that don't quite come together where I'm in bow range and he just slips out and I didn't get the shot. Or mule deer, I stalk him and gosh, he caught me, he busted me, and he busted out of there and I didn't get a shot. Like that stuff is going to happen, but you just have to pick yourself back up and go create another opportunity. And so you have to have like this resilience or this positive mindset on these hunts, because these hunts are going to be nothing but hurdles, or things are not going to always go as planned. And so when you find hunting pressure, when you don't find the animals, when you mess up a stock, when it doesn't come together on a bull, it's like the way I like to look at it is like, man, that was fun. That was what a thrilling encounter. Maybe I could have done this different, but man, was that fun. And now I need to go find another one. Like you just move on to the next one and go try to find it. But I very rarely kill the animal on my first play of the year. Like sometimes it happens that way, but A lot of times it takes me 2, 3, 4 chances. And if I would have given up after that first stalk, like I wouldn't have punched my tag or I wouldn't have killed a buck on that hunt. So I think staying resilient, keeping your head in the game, not getting too negative on yourself, and just getting back after it is such a key component to notching that tag or to killing an animal on one of these hunts.
Yeah, that's ultimately it. If you don't have any resilience, bow hunting's probably not for you. Like if you're very easily knocked down and stay down, you're going to struggle. And until you figure that out, uh, it's going to be a nightmare probably. But I like to call it hunting angry, and it's a calculated anger. But if a stalk or two or three or four or eight doesn't go right, for me, it it just drives my will to get it done, my will to try harder, and my will to, be out there a little bit early in the morning to listen for bugles, or right at the first flicker of light to glass, and right at the end of light. But when I hunt angry, it's calculated anger, and I actually get more lethal if I'm hunting angry. At this point, if I get to the point where I'm hunting angry, I'm probably 3 or 4 days into it. The drive for me to want to be successful is at a maximum, but I'm channeling this energy and I'm channeling this effort appropriately as well, because I'm hunting angry and I still want to be very calculated. But when I get into the zone and it happens, I mean, talk about ice through your veins. Like, it's just how I am and it's how I react to situations. And I've been able to see that over the years. And so I use that to my advantage, like how I react to pressure. And yeah, you get ice water through your veins. You're not shaky. You're like kind of angry. You're like, okay, it's my turn, buddy. Or like, this is it. Like, I got you. And you come to full draw and you're just like bench rest solid, is what I like to say. That pin is just rock solid right where it needs to be. And you aim and pull through, and it's over. And a lot of times that it might go that way, and other times, like you said, mule deer hunt 5 days in, I'm hunting angry. I just have the perfect approach. And this is in the mule deer course, by the way, this hunt that I did. And it was like 55 yards down at an angle. I'd been sitting there freezing for an hour and 15 minutes, I think, and I just missed. I just missed. And I was hunting angry at that point, but after that, it's like you have to laugh too. Like, so you have to like be very controlled with how you channel your emotions and how you use those emotions, because ultimately it's bow hunting, and that's why we do it. You have to embrace it, and you embrace those misses and you embrace those hardships just as much as you embrace those successes. And those hardships and those misses that's why probably make high country mule deer hunting the hardest species to hunt in the West, because it's just so mentally taxing, and it's so easy to go wrong. It's so easy to not execute that perfect shot and miss an animal, even if the conditions are right. But ultimately, you got to laugh at it and just know that you grew as a bow hunter after this trip, and you're going to be better because of it. And ultimately, that's why we do it. And those successes wouldn't be as sweet if you didn't have those failures and those hardships. And I like to think that I suffered a lot with more hardships as a young man out there, and so now I find more success. But that's all those years and that time and gas money paying off. And you get a little bit of gray in the beard, and before you know it, you do find that you're punching more tags than you're going home empty. I mean, I know you're the same way. And I think it's just the journey of bow hunters that really, if you latch onto bow hunting, if you really, you know, just make it your thing, you definitely get good at it. Bottom line.
Man, that's some bow hunter psychology right there, Dan. I love that stuff because I don't think I've thought about that or articulated that hunt angry as well as you just did. It's like the closer I get, the more driven I get. The close calls that I have, it just like pushes me harder, you know. It's just like you just want it so bad. You've worked so hard throughout the year and put so much time and effort, and now you're on this hunt, had this close call that didn't quite come together, and then it's like I'm more driven. And I love the ice water through your veins. It's like, yeah, all of a sudden I'm not excited or getting the adrenaline spikes anymore. Like I am just out there to kill a mature muley buck, like whatever it takes, whatever I have to do. You described that perfectly. That's like total bow hunter psychology, and that is when critters die. It's like sometimes I make good on an early opportunity and everything comes together, and I feel like a hero or I really know what I'm doing. But more times than not, I end up hunting angry because of close calls or because it didn't come together. And then, I'm not like actually mad. I'm just like driven.
Yeah.
I'm so driven to try to get it done and get narrow. And it's such this like the ultimate challenge. It's like so difficult. You just have this challenge out in front of you. It's just like, man, I've been in bow range of 3 different bucks and I still haven't loosed an arrow. I want it so bad, and I know that I can do it, and I know that it can be done. It's just had this ultimate challenge in front of me. And you're right. All of a sudden now I don't have adrenaline spikes. My pin just sits right where it needs to be. I execute the shot and the hunt's over, and then I'm a hero, you know. But it does take that sometimes, like that driven nature, you know. Man, it's so funny. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, you described that really well. And a lot of times that is how my hunts end up.
Yep. Yep. And when you're doing them back to back to back like that, it's like, yeah, you got to dig deep. And I feel like too that with videoing hunts, there's another level of pressure too that is involved, and it can really ruin it for some guys if you're wired a little bit differently. I do like the pressure. I I do like that. It's not stress, it's just pressure. But
Pressure.
yeah, I like it, and like I thrive on it, and
Hmm.
I want more of it because those successes are that much sweeter when there's so much at stake. I feel like there's a lot at stake. We're gathering content, and not that, like I've illustrated in the past, just because you go home empty, it doesn't mean that it was a complete failure. We don't air a lot of those hunts, just because we might not have the slots or enough time to air everything that we do. But when it comes down to it, it's it's just it's tough, and you have to be able to embrace that pressure and embrace that stress and turn it into positive energy. I know that sounds like yuppie or hippie of me or whatever,
Not at
but
all. Yeah.
yeah, like you get it. Like you have to turn it into positivity, otherwise you will fail.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that, man. Thriving under the pressure. That's what bow hunting is. Yeah, and it does. It like ups the degree of difficulty, and not to like pat ourselves on the back or anything like that, but bow hunting, public land, and then with a cameraman to try to get into range of these things. You talk about up the degree of difficulty. Like it's tough enough on your own out there solo, but then you try to sneak 2 people into range or make the right moves, and then just the pressure too of wanting to perform or wanting to put it together. And you're right, like a lot of the failed hunts don't see the light of day. So to make a film, it's got to come together and you got to make it happen. And that pressure, not only the pressure in the moment, but the pressure day after day to continue to try to create an opportunity. But I do think, yeah, it's like one of the most difficult things on planet Earth. And then you throw a cameraman in it, it's like it's even more difficult yet, you know. But it is sweet when it comes together and you execute a good shot and harvest that animal, and then you're able to showcase it and show it to different people and other hunters that can appreciate it. Show it to family and friends. It's like really, really rewarding when it comes together. And the truth is like we just I don't like to fail either. I don't like to come up short. Like every one of these hunts that I plan, I want to try to come out on top or at least give my full effort into it. And at least if I know I gave my full effort, like I can keep my head held high. But yeah, man, it isn't easy out there. Definitely like, and there's more and more guys going hard. There's more hunting pressure. It's like man, it's definitely, it never was easy, but it's definitely not getting any easier either.
For sure, for sure. I'm kind of like laughing inside when you're talking about having a camera guy with you, and go to Hawaii or wherever it is, some of these hunts that I don't film and I'm just flying solo, or I'm, with my wife Eva and we split up, and it's just like, man, it's so much easier when you're solo hunting without a camera guy. And I'm not discrediting our camera guys, because they're badasses and they're awesome. But yeah, it's just the level of difficulty that now not only are you responsible for your stealthiness, you're responsible for your camera guy's stealthiness, and then your camera guy has to almost be a better hunter than you are, and anticipate the shots and anticipate all those movements even better than you. And so it's definitely a team thing, and you got to be selective on it. It's kind of a rabbit trail, but we're looking for a new camera guy this year. And I put an ad out there on Instagram, and I got, I think, 90 applicants. And there's like, I look for a very specific person and traits, and that's great, like if you have a lot of hunting experience and you're an asset in that way. But like, that's ultimately not what I'm looking for. And when you're looking for a camera guy, almost in it, it's not that I'm being selfish or self-righteous, but I want to mold an individual how I need them to be with my style of hunting, and I know what that takes. And so I like, guys that they may not have as much experience, but they're moldable, they're workable. And ultimately, if it's quite the, as Brian, we've all been there. We've all hunted with camera guys in the past where, it doesn't work out, or you're not meshing well, and there's a learning curve. I don't care, how good somebody might be. When you're bow hunting into distance, it takes some time and it takes some stocks to be on the same page. But yeah, that's like finding a camera guy that's on your level bow hunting. That's probably a podcast in itself, really, because there's so much to it.
There is, man. Those guys, well, they have to be as driven as we are too. It's like
Yeah.
difficult out there, and you're going for it. And like that hunting angry conversation. Like, I want it so bad. We are giving ourselves a chance at every turn. We are absolutely all in, and it's almost like a hunting buddy. You just have to team up, and you're like there for the same cause. They have to be so into capturing the video and putting it together, and so into doing whatever it takes that if they're not, it just doesn't work out. And so yeah, it is tough. It's finding the right guy that you can mesh with, really team up on a hunt, and then capture the hunt together. And a lot of times those guys have a more difficult job than us, dealing with our personalities and our driven nature. And then also they have just as much pressure during the shot. Like, we have to make a bow shot, but man, they have to get it on film and then not move too much behind you, or they're going to get crucified when it's all said and done because they busted the animal. So, they got just as much pressure on their shoulders as we do. And so, yeah, being able to mold these young men into good quality cameramen, and they have such an opportunity to really make a name for themselves and make a good film. And so it's like, it really getting on the same page with them is a real asset when you get somebody that you can work with. And yeah, we both work with Joe quite a bit, and yeah, we were definitely both able to get on the same page and harvest some animals with Joe, which is great. But yeah, we're trying out some new guys this year. I've got that Kobe did a hunt with me last year. Really excited to team up with him a bit more this year. And so yeah, we'll see what we can capture. But we're right on the precipice of it, Dan. It's like time. It's time to cut these legs loose and bend those limbs back and go see if we can arrow some critters, man. This is what we live for.
Yep, it is. Yeah, hitting the hills this weekend, working those legs, and I'm shooting out to 80 and 90, and just really wanting that bow to be an extension of my arm. And yeah, it's just like, man, you just get that feeling. And it's, we're into August and we had some cool temps, and it's like, yeah, it's go time. It's time to get serious. Game face is on, prepping. And so yeah, I'm definitely feeling it, and I'm excited for some early antelope hunting for sure. It's been a few years since I've had a tag, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, same. Shooting angles, running elevation every day, like just really fine tuning everything. As I know we're right here. And once season gets here, you have the skill set that you have. There's no more improving. There's no more shooting better. Like, I try to continue to shoot through season, not only to make sure my bow is on, but to make sure that I keep the skill set that I've worked so hard to gain. But once season's here, you have to spend so much time hunting. Like all your effort goes into hunting those animals. So yeah, that time to improve, or that time to make those final adjustments and things of that nature, like it's almost gone and by us. So yeah, make sure that you're not letting it slip between your fingers and doing all the necessary things that you can to prepare for season, because once it's here, you're going to be in the grind and in the hunt, and then you're left with the skill set that you've worked hard in the off season and years past to earn.
Yep, for sure. With that being said, are there things that you can over prepare for in all this? Like I think about this stuff, and in the past, like for example, I would overshoot and I would develop bad habits because I'd get fatigued and I just feel like I need to shoot more. But I ask you this because I will take some time off from shooting a bow and throughout the year. I'm talking, throughout the year. I will take some time off, and I feel like when I get back in it and I start shooting again, I'm shooting honest. I don't have any bad habits. I don't have that muscle memory or that repetition from, shooting all summer and into bow season. But I feel like it's a good reset to have. And maybe that's just what works for me. But what are your thoughts on that? Like over prepping or maybe overshooting? Is that such a thing for you?
Mhm. Yeah, see, like, I think it comes down to, I think it's personal. Like, I shoot the best when I'm shooting a lot, when I'm shooting all season, and so, yeah, I shoot arrows. I mean, yeah, I mean, so the overshooting comes where, like, you start to get a bit of target panic where the pin doesn't sit in the middle of the bullseye anymore, and you start to get inside your own head, and it won't aim correctly, or like you say, you start getting tired. Like, I think that yeah, I think that's definitely true, and I think a break is good for the mind. We spend so much time thinking and doing bow hunting, so I think it is good in the off season to give yourself a little bit of a break and then ramp up coming into season. But yeah, we're doing so many spring hunts, and
Yeah.
geez, I think I've already been hunting 30 or 40 days with Australia and Hawaii and bear season, and so I've got to keep ready pretty much throughout the season. And so for me, I shoot I shoot quite a bit. So for me, I don't have the over prepare, but I definitely can see that. And you know, I do hear what you're saying, is like a break is good for me, just a break from my brain, like a break where I just take like a few weeks where I'm not thinking about it and come back to it. I do come back fresh. So I definitely understand where you're coming from. And I think that is true for a lot of guys, is if definitely if you're control shooting, and control shooting is one of the most effective ways to hunt big game. And if you don't get target panic where you can still put your pin in the middle and choose when that arrow goes, that's a really effective way to kill animals. The problem with it is like the more arrows you shoot, you can start to develop that target panic where that pin wants to settle low, or doesn't want to settle in the middle, or doesn't want to go in there. So yeah, you do have to be careful with how much you practice when you're control shooting. So I think it's like on an individual basis, for sure.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it's like, with all the hunts, winter hunts, spring hunts, and then summer hunts, depends. It's like, yeah, even if you wanted to take some time off, you probably don't have time to take time off. And every year is a little bit different, but yeah, I guess that's the biggest takeaway is, yeah, if you take a few weeks off, it's probably not going to be the end of the world. I know I've come back fresh, and but I definitely, on the flip side of that, I need like a month or 3 weeks before season or before my hunt to really be shooting every day and get that muscle memory and get that strength, and do aiming drills and draw my bow and hold for a minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes, like train myself, right? All these little things that I'm working on, and so it's prep that's absolutely necessary, that'll pay off in the field for sure. But yeah, I just try not to overthink it, I guess, is maybe
Yeah.
what I'm getting at.
Well, I do think once we get to this part of the season, it's not about shooting 100 arrows a day. It's like really you're going to get one chance in one arrow. And so, Yeah, I mean, as I think about it as you're talking, it's like I do put a lot of pressure on the first arrow, and I shoot a lot of one arrow groups where I just walk by the garage door and grab my bow and I shoot one arrow at a distance. And it's like, then I have to live with that arrow for a couple hours or maybe even an overnight before I get one more chance. But I'm really trying to put pressure on that one arrow, you know? So yeah, it isn't about pounding the target this time of year and pounding it with hundreds of arrows. By this time, my strings broken, my bow's dialed. Like I'm more working on myself to make sure that I can make that one shot when I get a chance. And probably, you know, I'm probably shooting less arrows this time of year than I would be like in the heart of the season or when I'm dialing in a bow. I'm just, it's like maybe shooting somewhere between 10 and 20 arrows a day and really shooting a lot of one arrow groups, or at least when I go out to shoot that first arrow, I'm trying to put pressure on myself. I'm trying to think that that buck is standing out there, maybe even a few push-ups or a few pull-ups or whatever it is to get the heart rate up. And I like when my pin doesn't aim or hold the same. Like I shot a couple days 3D and I shot the high score the first day and I shot really well. The pin aimed really well. But I shot a bunch of arrows and then it was like a 12-mile hike or 15 miles that day. So then the second day when I shot, I was fatigued and tired and my pin did not aim the same as day one, but I almost shot better. Like I didn't shoot a better score, but I had to fight through that pin float and had to continue to execute. And so my score might have been 10 points or something lower on the 3D course, but I was actually more proud of how I shot the second day because I was all fatigued and tired, you know. So yeah, I definitely think a lot of emphasis on the first arrow this time of year.
Yep, that's excellent stuff right there. Is those one arrow groups. That's what bow hunting is. You might work 6 days to draw your bow back once and shoot one arrow. So it's the first arrow that matters. And I think that's important, especially going into it. I do the same thing. It's that one arrow that matters. How do I feel when I draw that first arrow back? And usually your first arrow in how it's been with me, my first arrow is my best arrow. As I shoot more and more, fatigue sets in or whatever, then your groups start opening up. But my first couple arrows are always my best arrows. And so get in that mindset and just know that that's ultimately what matters out in the field is that first arrow.
Oh, 100%, man. Well, yeah, pulling for you this year. I can't wait to see what you turn up. Thanks as always, Dan. I love this podcast as we get on. We had absolutely no plan today, and it turned into a great podcast. So it's one of the beautiful things when you get a couple diehard bow hunters like us together, man.
Oh yeah, I love this stuff. I was telling my family about it at home, and my 11-year-old stepdaughter, she got on and she found our podcast and was listening to it. I thought that was pretty funny, but yeah, I really enjoy these.
Yeah, right on. All right, sounds good, man. Check in with you next week.
Sounds good.